But this document is one that Nick in particular was working on together with the Pacific Island, a number of nations in there who were wanting to look at, okay, how do we modernize our geodetic reference system? How do we go from older legacy systems, non-geocentric datums also, where there was limited information about the historic datums and benchmarks, reference ellipsoids and so on. All of that information, or all of those missing elements that make you think, okay, we need to modernize, but we still need to understand what was there originally so that we can translate the information that is currently available and used into a new modern system. And Nick and his team and some others from different organizations worked together on this roadmap document, forming it over a number of years. And essentially it is guidance, it's information, it's like a recipe book for performing different sets or different steps within modernization of a geodetic reference frame. The center has taken this initial document and evolved it and adapted it and put it all into one big document that we wish now to present to you as a means of being able, as a means for you to be able to help to think about, okay, what steps do we need to take? How can we go about doing and achieving those steps? But it's not just a technical aspect, as you're going to see here. I'll try and scroll down a few pages without jumping too far. It is a very big document, and it's a living document. Just trying to go. Yeah, just go to the contents, please, Walla. And there's a number of steps in here, so these are the different sections. There is an unlucky 13 sections at the current time. But each one of these chapters within the document, we feel is a necessary set of activities that you need to consider and potentially follow during your reference frame modernization activities. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these before you go into them. But one of the first few activities that we are proposing is that you actually do no technical work. And you might think, well, that's what we hear. We're geodesists, we're surveyors, we're gravity experts. We want to do that technical part. The first few steps are actually your preparation. Getting a better understanding of where you are today, what is the current situation, and also getting background as to where do we want to go in the future. We need to understand, and for example in step 1, is understand the current geospatial reference system and the needs of the stakeholders. So in this first particular activity, you're trying to understand where are we now, what do we have now. We can't improve on things until we know what we have now and see what is missing. So this chapter 1 is essentially to develop your Geodesy fact book for your nation. That is one of the very first steps in that. The second part of this is also to understand who are the main users and consumers currently of your products, of the geospatial reference system that you currently have, because that's really important to know. Why is it important to know? Well, let's say you don't have a geocentric datum at the current time and you want to move to a geocentric datum. You have to be aware that there are existing industries, government departments, end users currently using what you already provide. Whatever you develop and improve and modernize to, you always have to be wary that there are existing users today who we should try not to cut off. We've got to continue to give them what they are using in their operations, their activities. That's one of the really important parts, especially when you're talking around sustaining your mapping activities or sustaining your geodetic reference frame. You can't just say, we're going to go to the best, newest, most complex, most advanced geodetic reference system, and we're going to forget about everything we've done before. because there you have the risk of losing your user base. As Nick was talking about earlier today, but also yesterday, there are so many different industries which are already relying on the geodetic reference system that you currently have. Whether it's your data products, your real-time stream, whether it's your gravity information, heighting information. There are industries which have developed over many years, 10, 20 years or so, using the information that you currently have. So to make a radical change and switch everything off and move away and not continue to provide that is a huge risk. And that's why also in that step 1, we encourage you to reach out and understand what your current customers or your current end users, the stakeholders, what they are currently using and what they are going to demand in the future. Because you also need to modernize your system to incorporate what they are needing. I hope some of these points are clear, that you can't just jump into the future and forget about everything you've done. Step 2, and this is an interesting one, this is around communication. Again, not technical, not getting into equations and algorithms and sensors and devices, but this is actually being able to talk around, okay, why are we wanting to make these changes to our geodetic reference system? Why are we wanting to modernize, or why do we need to modernize? So within this particular chapter, we'll go into it later on, you'll see that we have a number of comments and suggestions and activities that you should consider to do as part of this communication activity. Again, it's a guidelines. It's not just a blank page where we say, communicate out what you're going to do in the future. This document contains ideas and suggestions that have worked in other nations and other countries and could work for your nation as well. But until you have that understanding of what your current geodetic capabilities is and where you want to go in your journey, you can't really describe or communicate that well. Section 3, and this is a challenging one. This is about governance. We need to be able to establish good governance that will help to support that modernization activity. We haven't said establish governance, because you can have governance and committees and organizations who meet often and talk about things but maybe don't decide on things or don't provide the support and the engagement that is necessary. So here we talk about establish good, effective governance. In the section you'll see later on also, this is where we have some suggestions and ideas around how you as the Geodesy experts responsible for Geodesy in your nation, understanding where you currently are and where you want to go in terms of your geodetic reference frame, and with the understanding of the stakeholder needs, you're able then to say, we will require several different governance groups around specific topics or activities, maybe even around the engagement between the mapping agency or the geodetic agency and key industry sectors who will require your data now and going forward into the future. Step 4, we see as developing business cases. And again, this is not something which is typically related to the technical aspects of geodesy and gravity and so on, but it's extremely important in terms of generating the understanding and the justification for asking for investment to modernize your reference frame. So these are very high-level steps. We have lots more information in the document, as you will see, but we hope that you get an understanding that many of these aspects here in the first few steps are not technical. They're the challenging admin parts that typically we don't like to do, but they're extremely critical to the success of you getting the funding, the understanding, the support from your stakeholders, from your governments, from industry around how you can do this. Step 5 is create a project plan. Now we start to think about how the rubber hits the road. How do we actually going to deliver this? The nice part about this is that if you can successfully complete the sections before, you'll have an understanding of where you want to go and what you want to deliver in a modernized frame. You've got stakeholders who are supportive of you. You'll have a good governance also who will be supportive of you. And you'll be able to communicate this to different sectors and different stakeholders. Step 6, we would say, is establish that GNSS network. Collect data, process data, and so on. These are terms which you're now becoming familiar with. Many of these activities you've already done, or you're already doing as part of your current geodetic activities. However, we wish for you to read this in the light of, we need to understand how we are going to develop these for where we want to be in the future, for how our future modernized geodetic reference frame is. For example, your current GNSS network or geodetic infrastructure hopefully is sufficient to deliver what you want to do now. But if you have to also factor in that there may be new industries around, let's say, autonomous vehicles or ITS, more location-based services in the future, you may have to think, well, actually, we might need to modify our GNSS cores network. We may need to densify it in certain areas. We may even need to go into new geographic areas because there may be a strong interest in the future from resources to mine and to grow that area. So these are some of the things that we really want you to start thinking around, because they ultimately will help to impact your geodetic infrastructure going forward. Some of these other activities that you see in there, for example, perform national geodetic adjustment. We've tried to touch on the importance of that and some of the activities around that. But again, as you're modernizing your system and you're moving to the geocentric reference frame, or you're adding additional capability or geographic coverage, you may need to take this into account and improve it going forward. We've already heard there around many nations in the Americas using the GHOST software for the adjustments. Well, adjustments are always going to be needed going on in the future, but you may have to rethink how you do that in the future. There's also the steps in there which will be very familiar to you about transformations, plate motion models, deformation models, and so on. Some of these may not be applicable to your nation. That's fine. You don't have to fill that out. That shouldn't be part of your roadmap. But we wanted to put all of these sections in here so that you could consider them. You could say, well, actually, no, that is not relevant to us. Or, actually, yes, we do need to start considering that. It may be something that we're not doing now, but yes, we really need to consider that going forward in the future. There's also a section in there about height datums. You need to be thinking about that height datum, especially for those nations with water boundaries and sea boundaries. You know, that joining land and sea, this is also extremely important. Not only from the security aspects, but the climate change aspects, and also the industrial aspects. So again, these are things where we would like for you to think, okay, how are we going to improve on these items? There's also a very boring section at the end there, in my opinion, and that's around legal and policy documents. Again, all of these changes to a geodetic reference frame and the modernization can be fantastic. Can be a really superior, well-operating, well-performing solution. But unless those changes are implemented into legal and policy documents, industry and stakeholders might not be using it, or might not use it, and therefore they won't fully benefit from the improvements that it can provide. So all in all, there's a lot of information in here. We also have quite a few examples. We have reference there to the Geodesy fact book, which you're familiar with from the activity this morning. Communications plans examples, business case examples. Some of these are for you to take a look at today, very briefly, but they'll also feature in sessions tomorrow, Thursday and Friday as well. I'm going to take a little pause here, and before I invite you to ask any initial questions and I give you the tasks, we really would like to stress here that this roadmap, it's a suggestion. It's not that you have to follow this. However, we feel that it's based on a lot of very good experiences from many different stakeholders, nations and projects, and that it will be an excellent resource for you to use and consider going forward. It's not that this document you can cut and paste and put your country name in and that's it, you can submit it. But we do really think it is a good working document to make you think around what are the steps that we need to consider for that modernization of our reference frame. Other aspects in there around the communications plan, the business case, these are also examples that we strongly recommend that you follow. Because during this journey, you are going to have to approach different stakeholders. You're going to have to go to ministers and politicians with your cap in your hand, seeking either additional funding for people or resources or equipment or training, or even to allow you to collaborate internationally with partners. So you have to really work on crafting and communicating what you want. And that's going to feature tomorrow in some of the communication and business justification sessions. So I'm going to come to a pause now because I've given you a lot of information. I've talked through a very big document with lots of activities. I'm just going to ask if there's any first questions around what you've seen or anything that you've looked into on the roadmap document. Probably a bit overwhelmed, I think, with this. So if there are no questions, I'd like to suggest that you get back into your teams, your national teams, the same that did the Geodesy fact book this morning or started on the fact book, and is to read through and get your own feeling on this document. Definitely start at chapter 1, but feel free to look through some of the different sections because, as I say, some of the sections may not be relevant to you, especially on the technical ones. Chapters 1 through 5 are definitely relevant to you because they're parts of the preparation. They're understanding your ecosystem.
Continuar y en el caso de no poder continuar, ¿cómo serían afectados? Creo que eso es lo que nos dio una idea de qué presentar o qué ideas presentar, más que decir que la geodesia es muy linda, decir que la geodesia es muy útil y que hay mucha gente involucrada y que espera que nuestro servicio continúe. Entonces, por eso sería un buen argumento para solicitar o para al menos tratar de solicitar recursos para continuar existiendo como servicio. Bueno, eso es mi opinión. El documento fue útil porque justamente nos hace pensar en eso, cómo comunicar y tratar de recoger más recursos. Y ver también, tuvimos una interesante discusión, a ver cuánto tiempo el nuevo sistema que vamos a establecer sería útil. Creo que tenemos una idea. Básicamente Uruguay tiene la suerte de no tener fenómenos sísmicos, tiene solo movimiento de placa que es de algunos milímetros por año, y vertical también hemos hallado que tiene unos 2 milímetros por año, que todavía no sabemos en realmente si es el terreno que está subiendo o tiene algo que ver con el nivel del mar. Es decir, si hay un movimiento en el mismo sentido del nivel del mar, estamos tratando de hacer las conexiones con los mareógrafos. Nuestra red vertical es muy buena, ya fue ajustado en números geopotenciales, pero todavía no tenemos una conexión clara a los dos principales mareógrafos de Uruguay. Entonces, es importante, creo que, ese estudio para saber realmente el movimiento vertical a qué se debe. Pero esa discusión nos sirvió también para saber más o menos ¿cuánto tiempo podría existir ese nuevo modelo? Yo pienso o estimo que entre 10 y 15 años podría haber una nueva actualización de algunos centímetros ahí. Bueno, eso fue mi comentario. Gracias.
Thank you for that, Walter. Yes. I definitely heard some interesting points and discussions during the overhearing or eavesdropping on the Uruguay discussion. It was very good. It was very good. Does anybody else wish to share any quick insights? Costa Rica, please.
Gracias. Para el caso nuestro, en el punto de acciones 1.3, identificar y comprender las necesidades de las partes interesadas. Cuando fuimos estructurando la parte de instituciones del Estado, caemos en cuenta de que no comprendemos muy bien la alineación entre la infraestructura de información con la que cuenta el Instituto Geográfico y la transmisión de esa información hacia esas instituciones. Nosotros como Instituto Geográfico generamos normativa técnica de aplicación prácticamente inmediata, pero no, o sea, por lo menos yo que estoy dentro considero que no tenemos los mecanismos adecuados para transmitir a cada una de esas instituciones esa normativa técnica, que aunque sí la aplican, no sabemos de qué forma la desarrollan dentro de cada una de esas instituciones.
Thank you for sharing that as well, and we really appreciate also to hear that some departments and groups don't feel that they have sufficient connection with other departments within their own government, and that's the way that things can be often. So it also highlights the need to be working on this communication, this outreach, reaching out to other departments within your government to get their buy-in, to get their at least awareness and understanding about what you are doing with your Geodesy programs or with your Geodesy activities, and to understand the services that you already provide to them. They may also not be fully aware of the benefits that are coming from your continued work around reference frames and height datums in geoid modeling and so on. So this is a very good opportunity, as we'll talk about tomorrow, where you can begin and practice improving your communication skills with other government departments. They almost have to listen to you. And that will be very good practice also then for going out for engagement with industry and with other stakeholders, potentially international partners, academia, and so on. So even though Geodesy is a technical issue or a technical activity, a science, an art, you still have to communicate the benefits of this. You still have to help people to understand how they can use it and benefit from it. So that's very important. Any other quick questions? Anybody think this is a very easy document, we can fill it in, or we don't need it? Or anybody still on section 1?
Just a quick remark that for a very small island, like the islands of the Caribbean Netherlands, it's quite easy. Even if we adopt a new datum, we can probably, with the false easting and the northing, make sure that the users get exactly the same coordinates as before.
That's great. The simpler the better. If you can come up with a simple method, do it. That's definitely the way to go.
Bueno, conversando con nuestros colegas de otras instituciones aquí en Chile, nos llamó la atención el tema de que, bueno, uno trabaja en fronteras internacionales, que es la DIFROL, la Dirección de Fronteras y Límites de Chile, y el otro colega trabaja en el servicio hidrográfico y oceanográfico, que ven las cartas náuticas, y ellos dos producen producen productos a nivel internacional, que tienen que tener normas internacionales, no solamente regirse bajo las normas de Chile. Y nos llama la atención que, por ejemplo, la misma Naciones Unidas pida en sus insumos, sus productos en sistemas de referencia de WG64. Entonces, ellos trabajan en WG64 porque así lo solicita, también da la opción del ITRF 2020, pero lo trabajan de esa manera porque la misma Nación Unida lo piden así. Digamos. Eso es como...
No, because you just say it in Spanish. Yeah, so
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and it is something that we have talked to groups like the International Maritime Organization, International Hydrographic Organization, World Meteorological Organization, ICAO for civil aviation standards. A lot of their consensus-based agreements that they developed are very old, and so that's one thing. And at that time, GPS was the only way that you could position yourself in real time with that level of accuracy. So for that reason, things like WGS84 were adopted to be the standard. The other important thing to remember is that for many applications, knowing where you are within 20 meters or 50 meters or 100 meters is sufficient. It is fit for purpose. So a simple solution is always a good solution, as we were just talking about. In most cases that I have seen, in those international mandates, the use of WGS84 is still sufficient. It is still fit for purpose, and it will do the job that the member states of those conventions need. But there are some cases where particularly newer standards are referencing work that needs to be done to a greater level of detail. And in those cases where higher accuracy is needed, there have been people from the International Association of Geodesy who have been engaging with people on those conventions to get them to understand that WGS84 coordinates change with time, and they may need to think about changing the standard into the future. So it's an excellent point. In some cases, it's not a problem. In some cases, we need to keep working with those communities to try and improve that in the future. Yes?
You only mentioned technical reasons not or to use or not to use WS84. Do you think it's also a political reason that WS84 is not politically neutral because it's from one specific country?
I think, if coming back to the first point I made, I think it was chosen at the time because GPS was the only method available to do this work. So my feeling was it's not a political decision, it was purely the best technical solution and the most widely used technical solution that was available at the time.
Yeah, I agree with that, but to keep using it, that could be a reason to say, okay, we don't need the accuracy of ITRF, but we want the political neutralness of ITRF instead of WS84.
I think that's a good point that some countries would recognise and want to take up. Have you ever been to an international negotiation session at a multilateral convention? These things can take 15 to 20 years to change. If you look at the ICAO International Civil Aviation Standards that have been developed, changing which frequency they use to transmit data on has taken 10 to 15 years. So these things they move at glacial speed. I'll let you wrap up.
Okay, thank you very much to everybody for your contributions in the discussion and also the activities. We've run a few moments over, so thank you in advance to the translators. just like to close this session around the roadmap and say that you'll be continuing with another activity or activity time for this on Friday afternoon. But please take the chance to look over this a little bit more, study it, because we really do see this as a useful guidance and resource for you in your nation's journey on that modernization. It's not just this workshop activity. Please feel free to use this document to help make you think of other opportunities or other issues you need to take account of.